sense for that. I think meeting my parents was the hardest exam of the year when I come home to visit my parents. I was like, whoa, it's like practice. I just came back from Thailand, the long-term retreat there. And I'm able to see myself grow. So now when I interact with my parents, I'm able to see the visual tendency that I got from that.
So did you fail the exam?
I'm hanging on there, still hanging. And I know that sometimes you have to have a solid practice before you can help others and save others. So as a child, I love them deeply, and I sincerely see them struggle. I want to introduce them to the practice, but the practice isn't strong enough. But sometimes I feel selfish just by not holding them. So that would be my question. What would I do in this situation?
I think you're not alone. Everybody has this kind of challenge, especially if you're more committed to the Dharma practice. You've gone on retreats, you meditate. If other people around you, family, parents, are not practicing quite as much as you, they don't maybe have such strong faith, of course they're going to look at it different than you. And there'll be sometimes a little bit of culture clash. So you want to practice mindfulness, keep precepts, listen to Dhamma, meditate, and they don't. And it will bring up many things in your many reactions, many thoughts in your mind as you spend time with them, say come back to them from a retreat. Just accept it. And they're helping you to be more mindful. They're helping you to see your own attachments. So if you find yourself getting irritated with your parents or any other family member, getting annoyed or feeling sad, why don't they understand the Dhamma, why aren't they practicing more, I want them to see the Dhamma and benefit, whatever thoughts are coming up, they're teaching you something. You have to learn to be tolerant of yourself, tolerant of them. Be mindful. That's where you need to be mindful. When you're at home, you're with your family, it's the most challenging of all. That's where mindfulness will be the most beneficial. The more effort you put into being mindful, the better. And there's some very simple kind of guides, like with parents, just agree with everything they say. Just agree. Don't argue, don't disagree, at least openly, don't disagree. Maybe in your mind you think, whatever they say, I don't agree, I'm not quite right. But outwardly, just agree. They've done so much for you. Always remember that, with gratitude, what they've done for you to get you to this point in your life. Even if you've been able to go and live in a monastery or a retreat somewhere, your parents had a hand in helping you to get to that point as well. Even if they're not Buddhist or they don't support you in your practice, they have indirectly supported you. So reflect on that, bring up the gratitude, and just look at them with gratitude, appreciation, with the thought, I hope that they one day can realize Dhamma as well, and see whatever you can do to help them, give them something back. May that may be simply not arguing with them. You just, whatever your mum says, yep mum, you're right, I agree, yep. And you just walk around the house going, yes. Maybe that's what you have to do as your Dhamma practice, to stop you falling into your old habits. As we grow up in the life, we often resist our parents a bit because they're a different person and they look at us one way, we look at things a different way. There'll be some resistance, some friction, some differences, but don't give in to your own resistance or stubbornness. Just relax, wish them well, agree with them, be kind to them, help them in whatever way you can, because it's not harming you in any way. They're only coming from a place of love and care. Even if they say, oh, I don't want you to practice Dhamma, they're just expressing their love in their own way. And you may have to adjust how you practice the Dhamma. You meditate quietly in your room or on your own sometimes when they don't see. Maybe you have to be a little bit, separate your Dhamma practice from them. But then when you're with them, it's also Dhamma practice. It's just in a different way. So your Dhamma practice with your parents maybe is one of kindness, patience, being helpful, being tolerant. But that's still Dhamma practice. Remember Lumpur Man. Lumpur Man is like the grandfather of all forest monks. Many forest monks come to this temple. We all remember Lumpur Man. And if you read his biography, there's one story of Lumpur Man staying in a cave with a grumpy naga. A grumpy naga. A naga is like a snake god. So it's half snake, half god. It's a very special kind of being, and Lumpur Man could see these beings, but it also meant he could hear what they're saying. And this naga was very grumpy, always complaining, this monk, who is this bald-headed guy walking up and down here, annoying me, invading my cave, making so much noise. All Lumpur Man is doing is walking, meditation, practicing mindfulness. He's only doing very good things. But still this grumpy naga is criticizing him, complaining about him, and Lumpur Man he just reflected, I have to practice patience, mindfulness with my own reaction. This stubborn naga wants to berate me, belittle me, humble me. Okay, I'm going to be mindful with this, be patient with this, I'm not going to give in to anger. And he took it as a practice. So we can do the same with our parents. Our parents are used to telling us what to do. They're used to pushing us around, telling us go here, go there, do this, do that. We're going to practice with that and not give in to our anger. So it's a teaching. Maybe your parents will help you get enlightened quicker.
Thank you very much. We have another question.
Brian, two questions. The first one, repeating to myself. This morning I was thinking of coming over to the talk, but I need to visit my mom and my family. So I was telling my wife, okay, I will be leaving early, and then you and she will stay at my mother's place. And the guy was, no, you go up, I'll be going back home. Then I said, no, she'll stay longer at my mother's place. So, and then, reluctance to stay at my mother's place, so maybe think, maybe it's my attachment, my grief, nothing good about the talk. So I rationalized myself, okay, I think I will let go, and let go of this attachment and not be ready to go for the Dharma talk. And so in the afternoon, late afternoon, when we were about to close my mother's place, so my daughter was not feeling well. So my wife had to stay, no choice but stay behind to look after her. And so I went to my mother's place. And after that, I thought with my two other boys. So at about 7, so I was telling myself, okay, so I actually forgotten I've already given up the intention of coming over to the talk. Then about 7, so I was so the topic, now my wife is not here, I can just go for the talk. So I asked myself, you want to go back to myself? So no, they want to stay with the cousin. So I said, okay, then you stay here, you're going away. So my question is this morning I was I was feeling distress of wanting to go for the talk, yet cannot go. And I rationalized after trying to rationalize the reason myself. So I let go of the stress by letting go of not going for the talk. So I just project is this way of rationalizing or contemplating the correct way.
Well, any aspect of the practice, reflection, contemplation, it's always to try and understand, become mindful of something, understand it, and let go of any suffering arising. So obviously today is a special day, it's a family day, New Year's Day, so I don't think anybody would criticize you if you wanted to go to a Dhamma talk but you decided I can't go because I've got to stay with family. But then if you are lucky and the situation is still open to go for the Dhamma talk, well, that's also a very special and very good thing to do on such a auspicious day as New Year's Day. So there's no one answer here whether you should go or not. You know, obviously Dhamma talk is a very good thing, but you also have to look at other obligations. But you mentioned that you thought it was being greedy, the thought to come for the Dhamma talk. Well, I wouldn't say it's greedy. We have that natural aspiration for the Dhamma. We want to practice Dhamma, listen to Dhamma, or maybe offer dana, go on retreat sometimes. So it's not necessarily greedy, it's something you know is a good thing. You have the aspiration, the faith to practice, you want to do that. But then you're also a caring father, husband, so you know I also have these other obligations. And I think you'll find you quite often will have to balance your family commitments with the Dhamma. And sometimes they will work together, sometimes they will seem separate, and you just have to adjust. I wouldn't get too stressed about it, because if you miss a talk one day, well, there may be other occasions you can go to a talk. Or if you go to a talk sometime and you spend a little bit less time with the family, well, later on you can catch up with the family, do more later. So it's never going to be perfect. Life is not perfect and very straightforward, is it? Sometimes a bit more over here, sometimes a bit more over there. So try to relax, don't get stressed about it, and just see what works, what fits each occasion. Maybe the ultimate dream is to bring the family with you to the Dhamma talk.
Recently, my family, I practice meditation at home, so they just watch me practice. So far, something that basically my wife, they are interested in the Dhamma.
Yeah, that's very common. But maybe you make an aspiration in your meditation. You share the merits with them in your mind, in your meditation, and you wish that one day they will come to the Dhamma, they will learn to meditate, learn to come to the temple as well. But that's a long-term goal maybe. And at the moment they may not be ready for that, but you have that wish, may I bring my family into the Dhamma. And just work towards it. Then these problems will get less and less.
Okay, my second question is regarding earlier in your talk you mentioned about I think that Buddha's past life, something like after practicing mindfulness, then when he fall in love, and then after that who already lost the mindfulness and so on. So my question is when one practices so-called the path, meaning practice Dhamma Sila Bhavana, so does it so-called go against the grain if we fall in love with someone, so they become fall in love and get the householder?
Oh, it's a very natural thing. It happens to most of the people in the world sooner or later, falling in love or having a relationship. So don't look down on it or get too stressed about it. The majority of lay Buddhists, they follow the 5 precepts, or try to. Maybe they're not perfect yet, but that's the aim of the lay Buddhist life. And that means you can have a partner, you can fall in love, you can live together, support each other, care for each other, even have children. Of course, that is bound up with various duties, responsibilities, and maybe suffering because of it. But nevertheless, it's very normal, and if that's the level or the way you feel comfortable practicing, that's fine. And it's quite possible you can even attain stream entry as a lay practitioner, keeping 5 precepts with a relationship with a husband, with a wife. You can do that. But at the same time, you'll have read and met people who have maybe reached a point where they've either, you could say, had enough of the lay life, or they're ready to take another step, maybe keep 8 precepts as a lay person, or even go into a monastic situation. There are a smaller number of people who are willing and ready to do that. Sometimes it's when they're younger. It's rarer, because if you have a partner and even children when you're younger, well, usually you feel you're required to look after them, and then maybe when you're older, in middle age, maybe your children have grown up, they can look after themselves, your partner is able to look after herself, maybe then you could consider going, or certainly onto 8 precepts sometimes, or even going into a monastery. And it's very common in Buddhist countries like Thailand that maybe men and women, when they're 40, 50 years old, they think of leaving their job, leaving the family because the family is established, the kids have grown up, and moving into a monastery or dedicating more time to the Dhamma is very common. So you just see what works for you. If you still have your obligations to family, that's fine. You can fulfill that obligation and you incorporate your Dhamma practice at the same time around that obligation. And then maybe one day you have that long-term aspiration to commit more to the Dhamma, keep 8 precepts, or even become a monastic. Of course, if you go into the monasteries or you become a monk, you still have your mental defilements, your conditioning, your karma. So every monk will have to deal with lust, the desire for romance, the desire for friendliness. Sometimes they say if you've already had that earlier in your life, then you know what it is. Maybe it's easier to reflect on it and let it go, maybe. Maybe it's harder if you enter the robes young and you haven't had much romance, you haven't gone that way in your lay life, then maybe it's a little harder. You have to work harder to deal with basic lust, sexual desire and lust, if you haven't had much worldly experience. But in the end, it depends on the personality and the karma of the individual. And if you lead a celibate life as a monk, you will have to deal with lust. It's just part of the human condition. So we practice mindfulness, restraint, and the Asupa meditations, contemplation of the body, to reflect on what lust and romance and romantic attachment is. And it's, you're attaching to a body, your body, and the pleasure of your body, and another person's body. And one of the ways you measure your progress in the practice is where you can develop a sensitivity and an understanding what is sensual desire and sensual pleasure, and then the pleasure that comes from the Dhamma, such as from the practice of samadhi, insight, and letting go of attachment brings pleasure and happiness as well, but it's a much more refined, satisfying kind of happiness. And as your Dhamma practice progresses, you see the difference more and more clearly. You see the limitations of sensual desire, pleasures based on the body and the material world, and then the Dhamma pleasure, the pleasure coming from meditation, insight, renunciation, precepts, and there's a clear difference. And one is, you could say, better or more satisfying than the other. And that's something that will come through the practice. And eventually, the arahants, they completely give up all sensual desire. Last sensual desire, it's gone. And this is a progressive practice, so we have to keep working towards it through our developing our mind.
Thank you for question.
Practicing our mindfulness. Another one particular aspect, we have to concentrate to work out mindfulness more better result.
Say that again.
I think mindfulness, everything you say, we do practice mindfulness, but sometimes the mindfulness somehow or other slips away, and then we need to concentrate it and bring it back again.
Yeah. Put effort into bringing up mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
That's a central part of our practice, yeah.
Is it okay, or how you go about bringing this approach of mindfulness and concentration under what aspect?
Well, when you have the time and opportunity, then developing meditation in what we call the formal way. Sitting and walking meditation where you have no other duties and responsibilities, whether it's just for a short period of time, in your day, or if you have a chance to go on retreat or stay on retreat like this, putting lots of effort into mindfulness, sitting and walking, maybe using a meditation object like the breath, although it could be another meditation object, and making your mindfulness really strong and continuous. That's one central part of the practice. But then what we call daily life, when you go to work or you're doing other activities which are not meditation, we're also aiming to cultivate mindfulness. So maybe a good thing to do would be read the Buddha's words on mindfulness, the Satipatthana Sutta. And the first area you practice mindfulness is mindfulness of the body. And he says, your posture. Bring mindfulness, pay attention to your posture throughout the day. Standing, walking, sitting, lying down. So from the first moment of your day, you wake up. If you're lying down on your bed, you wake up, you establish mindfulness. Maybe go to the breath, or just examine your body as you wake up. Maybe there's aches and pains, different sensations, the air, or it's cold or it's warm. You start there. And as you go through your day, you're doing different activities, but you can be mindful of your posture. And then the different activities you're involved with, make them the basis for being mindful. So say you're eating. The Buddha said, well, be mindful of the food you're eating, how much you eat, what you're eating, the purpose of why you're eating, the act of chewing food, swallowing food. You notice when you eat unmindfully, what do? Sometimes you bite your tongue. You stick your spoon too far into your mouth. You're talking to someone and eating, and you dribble your food or spill it out, or you make a mess. Even something like eating, you can see how mindfulness plays a role there. Walking along, in your house from one room to another, you can be mindful. As you sit in front of a computer, if you do that, you're typing, that becomes what you're mindful of. That task of typing, you go shopping and you're buying something in a shop, you're mindful of the act of spending the money, choosing a product to buy, the cost of it, what you're doing, why you're doing. That's mindfulness practice as well. You're talking to someone, you practice mindfulness of speech, right speech. You look at the Eightfold Noble Path, we got many factors there. So one factor is Samavaja, practicing right speech. So what is right speech? Mindful of what you're saying, whether it's true or not, whether it's with a heart of kindness or not, whether it's useful or not, whether it's helpful or not. There's so much that you can be mindful of through the day, but that's part of the practice. So your actions, your speech, all come into the practice of mindfulness, your posture, and then of course as you refine it, you're more aware of feelings, pleasant, neutral, unpleasant, what you're thinking, your thoughts, your views and opinions on things, your state of mind, whether it's peaceful or not peaceful, whether you have greed, anger, delusion there or not. After a while you realize, really you have a lot of work to do with this mindfulness practice. You can be mindful of yourself every place, every time, every activity. There's always plenty to do in terms of cultivating mindfulness. And you keep doing that, refining it, becoming more mindful, and particularly aware of mental defilements as they come into the mind, watching them, knowing them, and working out how to abandon them. And that takes wisdom as well. So mindfulness works directly with wisdom, panya. So we talk about like mindfulness is the vehicle that brings wisdom to bear or to be present in any activity. So to know a thought as being wholesome or unwholesome, kusala, akusala, that takes mindfulness to be aware of what's going on in your mind at that moment. And then wisdom says, oh, this is unwholesome, this is to be let go of, abandoned. Or this is wholesome, this is to be developed, cultivated. So mindfulness and wisdom work together like two close friends all the time. If mindfulness goes, no mindfulness, you're not paying attention, you're not aware, wisdom can't function. So then you need them together. And you keep practicing till they're just there all the time. That's your goal. Until mindfulness and wisdom are constantly present, looking after your mind. So they're like your mother and father. You know, you're bringing up a child, you need mum and dad to do their different roles. You're practicing this Buddhist path, developing mindfulness and wisdom. You need both qualities to help look after this mind until you really see the truth and you see through the delusions that cause all the stress.
Thank you, Bhante.